one of the two of them. He was always telling jokes, always telling great stories. And Ray was always a really caring person who would just step into situations, and she had a great laugh. And my parents and the Stearns and a number of their other friends would have these amazing parties. And they would get together, and whatever kids were allowed to be there, we would stay at the top of the stairs in these houses. They were all the same house. It was development. And watch, because they would just laugh and talk, and they talked about politics, and they talked about life, and they were always, people would be talking, and like Ben Stern would just jump to his feet so that he could put his 2 cents in. And it was just terrific to watch them. And they were like everything that you can imagine adults could be to a child. You know, they were fun and interesting and wonderful. And Ben particularly was very, very funny. And Ray was always laughing at his jokes.
My parents did have parties. Like they would go over to a neighbor's house, or neighbors would come to their home, and I would sit at the top of the steps and listen to my mother and father, particularly my father, interact with other parents about politics. My father was also funny, and I saw that he was really, among his friends, the life of the party kind of thing. He really was the center, the focal point. Now, who knows if that wasn't just my imagination, because every kid worships his father, but my father was very academic in the sense that he was well-read. In the newspaper, he understood world events. He was very good at debating issues. So it was like almost like my father was doing a radio show in the living room, doing his thing with his friends. And they were always my mother was laughing at everything he said. So, yeah, I do remember that. That was probably a good part of my education in terms of radio.
Ben told funny stories about people, and sometimes they were, at the expense of the person. So I think Howard grew up in that household, hearing funny stories about people, and that would certainly have laid the groundwork for his humor today.
My father influenced me more than anyone. My father and my mother, in terms of radio and presenting myself. And I don't think it was a conscious thing, like they said, here, listen to us and be on the radio, but it was their demeanor. It was the way my father behaved when he had these parties, and the way he was with other adults. There was no nonsense, and he would talk, and he talked succinctly, and he'd get to the point, and he always was very opinionated. And my mother was funny in her own right, and was a good audience, and would laugh, and it was just a certain dynamic there that, in some ways, reminds me of our radio show.
His father used to perform in the temple, and I was always the one that would volunteer his father's services. They inevitably made him a woman, and Howard saw this. So his father dressed up many times as a woman and performed. So therefore, Howard had no qualms about dressing up as a woman and performing.
Some of the roles I played, I was Snow White, with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we had friends. I'm 6'2", they were like 5'2", and I'm marching with this gang. Then they had a wedding. My bride, I was the bride, and I was a female, and the woman played the man. She was about 4'9", and I would march down with this thing. I mean, all these crazy things.
I was his best audience.
Yeah, she signed me up.
New York City is the place where they said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side.
While Ben entertained on the weekends, most of his time was devoted to providing for his family, working long hours at a Manhattan recording studio.
I tell you, I didn't spend as much time as I could have, because I used to leave in the morning, and I would go off, to work. And in the recording business, you never knew when your day ended. Could end 6 o'clock and then 2 o'clock in the morning. So, all these days I was really in and out of the house. So I'd see him sometimes for dinner. But I thought it was pretty good as it goes.
Weekends we shared all the time together. We would have our meals together because Dad was home on Saturday and Sunday. And we shared that. And we went places. And in fact, both my kids preferred going with us at times than going with their friends because they said they had a better time. So we would go to the movies together. We would go...
Speaking of going to movies together, I remember we went to see Damn Yankees. I loved it. And we all were taken with it. So I get up I love to sing. I have the worst voice in the world. Horrible. Even when I hear it, I cringe. So, the kids, I think kids are dummies. They don't know. They think I'm your father singing. He knows what he's doing. So they used to bring home records of me singing. So I'm going off to work, and it's still in my mind. So I start singing "Goodbye, Old Girl." Goodbye, old girl. You know, he's given up his life to become a ball player. And Howard is a little boy, and he's thinking, "Please, Daddy, don't leave us. Don't go." I mean, and he almost started to cry. I hate this song. And it was a funny scene. I always remember that. And he did me a big favor, Howard. I used to record some songs, and Shirley Jones came up, and he played one of my songs. She turned to him and said, "That is the worst thing I have ever heard."
And it is.
I know, it is the worst thing. You know, I think it was when you walk through a storm, keep your head up high. I was singing that with such gusto.
Good relationship with him?
Great relationship with my dad and my mom.
Even though he didn't support you?
He supported me in his own way. He was one of these guys who would get me piano lessons. He was always trying to. I think he was afraid for me. I think he saw me falling down a path that was never going to come to fruition in a big way. I'd be a ne'er-do-well. A radio guy like me would not make money. I think he was genuinely afraid for me.
Conservative man?
Some ways. My dad sometimes would vote. If you're talking about politics, he would sometimes vote Republican, sometimes vote Democrat.
Traditionalist, though?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Does he have any problem with your material?
No. My parents always love humor and mixing it up. This is how we spoke in the house. Not necessarily about sexuality, but they were never uptight about sex. A big bugaboo with me was sex. My mother got me a subscription to Playboy when I was 13.
Your mother got
Absolutely.
When you were 13?
Absolutely. She said to me, I said, "Mom, I want a subscription to Playboy." And she said to me, "It's a human body."
That's pretty progressive for Long Island, isn't it?
You're not kidding. She said to me, "I want you to know something. The women in Playboy are freaks." She goes, "You're not going to meet too many women with those kind of bodies." She said, "Take a look around you. Those are real women." She goes, "But if you want to look at a naked body, I could care less." And you know what? I got the Playboy once or twice, and I think that was the end of it. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal, sex.
We had very liberal kinds of ideas, and, if he wanted to read something that other families might get uptight about or something, I always felt that you absorbed as much as you were capable of understanding, and I never curtailed him in any way from watching anything.
We also felt at some point he's going to be exposed to it anyway. I think, if I remember correctly, didn't we get him a Playboy?
Yeah, we once allowed him to get a Playboy subscription. I mean, we weren't uptight about these things.
No.
But alongside these privileges came some unusual lessons that would stay with Howard for the rest of his life.
My mother used to say, one of my philosophies as a mother is that I want my children to be fearless. And then meanwhile, but what my mom would do is she'd sit me down and go, "Your Grandma Rose, her whole family was wiped out by the Nazis."
Everybody was dying back then.
Right. So listen to this. This was my day. Honestly, a day didn't go by where this was the lineup. I swear to God, I'm not kidding. So this is why
That was like the greatest.
This is your Penguins.
But this is like I want to think I wasn't scared by all this, but I think this has shaped my view of the world.
Absolutely.
Because this is from the time I was a little child. Your Grandma Rose, her whole family was wiped out. The Nazis came, they killed her brother. She had a family of 9. Her parents, everyone. She hid in a basement. A woman took her in. Then, okay, that story would be over. Then I'd hear, your father got yellow fever. If they'd put him in a hospital, he would have died. His mother took him. She quarantined him at home. His skin was peeling off. And she sat there and she bathed him. If she had gone to the hospital, they would have killed him. The doctors would have killed him.
Oh, and you wonder where these thoughts come from, then.
Then the next story would be, My mother, I was 9 years old. They came and told me she died. I don't know what happened. She went into the hospital. I think they might have killed her.
Well, that's exactly where it comes from. The hospitals kill you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're getting a medical procedure. They're probably going to kill you.
So the woman comes, and I can't even, this is how bad I am in therapy. I can't put, like, my therapist like, can you tie this all together? I go, no. I can't tie it together. Like, I don't take those stories.
It's so
No,
because you're too close to it.
No. It's not that he's too close. He's now evaluating them as an adult.
Yes.
He's not thinking of a little kid.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Hearing these stories, and you can't get in touch with that child and realize that he was terrified.
Yes. I don't want to think of myself as a little kid, even to go back in therapy.
Right. That's too scary.
Yeah, but I must have shit my pants because even as an adult now, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to come and take blood and kill me.
Well, that's the little kid talking while you're not governing everything that's going on.
Then, I only had my sister. And when my sister died, I lost everything.
It was almost like those recitation of prayers.
Yes.
Where they go through the stages of every part of their lives.
There was nothing
in a recitation.
good. There was nothing good in the family history. Then when I wanted to marry your father, my father said no. He didn't want to release me from the house. He liked having a servant.
Oh, dear, she was a servant?
And then your grandfather remarried, and finally I had a mother. But, of course, that relationship ended, and I had no mother. I mean, you hear these horror stories, I'm like, oh, my God, I want to weep.
Everything turns out bad, no matter what.
Everything bad, and I'm like, oh, my poor mother. Like, I identify with my mother so much. You would think I lived my mother's life in her shoes. I want my children to know everything. But I want you to be fearless when you go out into the world.
Even though it's good, everything's going to come crashing down around you.
There isn't a day I don't think Nazis are going to stormtroop through the house. You should hear it. The Grandma Rose had no one. All taken from her. And then your father's family came from Europe. In Europe, there were 4 children. 3 girls and a boy. They all died.
Well, it was just
they came over. And then your grandparents started another family again, 3 girls and a boy. I'm like, they all died in Europe? Yes, they all died. And then my father would chime in and go, things like ear infection. We had no medicine. And I'm like, what? And all the kids died? That's right. And then your father got the yellow fever. He was quarantined in the house. If they'd sent him to the hospital, he would have been dead.
Thank God they found each other.
That's right.
I'm like, oh my God.
2 people who could share the misery.
I got to tell you something. I live in a world filled with fear.
Howard's older sister Ellen gave him an ally in the house. Well, most of the time.
I sometimes took advantage of being the older sister. I think he tells this story. He liked to watch King Leonardo or cartoons, and I hated cartoons. So he was young, and I said, well, if I let you watch this one program for the rest of the year, I get to watch what I want to watch. And he didn't understand what a year meant. And when he finally realized what he had done, he went to my mother, and she said, well, you made a deal, and you're going to have to stick to that. So I would take advantage of him that way.
As I said before, she was 4 years older than him, so she was the big sister, the babysitter. In fact, when Howard was born and I called her on the phone, I said, you got a baby brother. And she said, just what I wanted. And so ever since, she, to this day, you cannot say a word against her brother. He's the best. And she really loves him, and they have a very good relationship.
I had a very good relationship with her. She was always very good to me. She had a lot of older girlfriends who were terrific because I got to look at them, and some of them were really hot. I remember I had a crush on one of my sister's friends. Her name was Sharon Landis or something, and she was really cute. I thought, wow, she's really hot. But she had male friends, kids who she went to school with, the older boys, and I guess maybe they liked her or something, but they treated me horribly. instead of like being nice to me, they'd see me on the street, and like one of her friends tried to drown me in a pool. Like I was swimming, and he'd hold me underwater for a real long time. Or some of the boys would taunt me who were older and really threaten me, and they weren't particularly nice. I remember one night my sister was babysitting for me, and a bunch of her friends were banging on the doors and stuff, trying to scare